Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Countdown to Scream 2022. Doesn't feel like we should be calling it that anymore, but we didn't come up with another name.
Well, when they announce the sequel, we can twist it around in whatever year it's going to be in. We can do Countdown to Scream 6 or Countdown to Scream 20-something.
Countdown to the next Scream.
I like that. That
And
covers all bases.
it can never go away. Like that term, that phrasing will always apply, right?
This is very smart. We probably should have thought of this
Before
prior to starting this podcast.
I was too busy thinking about the content of this episode.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
That's my excuse.
It's great content. We've got great content for people.
We do. So this episode of the show is going to be about the biggest questions that we have after the events of Scream 2022. So with that being said, no surprise, this is going to be filled with spoilers. So this right here is your one and only spoiler warning. Do not watch this video if you haven't seen the film, and please go see it. Go check it out. Tell us what you think about it, and then come back. And
People
watch
are
the video.
seeing this movie. People are loving and seeing this movie. It's now 51 million or something, over just past 51 million at the box office.
That makes sense.
Didn't quite hold on to the top spot, but hey, it's up against Spider-Man. And a 59% drop for a horror movie of this nature on the second weekend is really good in these times. So people are liking this movie, and it's holding its good box office success. So we're really happy.
You'll love this fact I'm about to drop. You know what really excites me? It's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got something like a 77%, I think, on the tomato meter, and then maybe like an 86 in
I think the audience score might be 83 last time I checked. We'll double check me there, but yes.
I'm gonna
the interesting thing is that the score is actually climbing. So I believe at opening weekend, the film was a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I used to be the editor-in-chief of Rotten Tomatoes and can tell you that when something is like that on the cusp, they're very reluctant to certify it fresh, because if it goes down, etc., it needs to really hold that. But over the last week, it's actually gone from 75 to 76 to 77. So what you're seeing is more reviews coming from different territories as the film opens. They're coming in, they're being counted on Rotten Tomatoes, and they're actually increasing the positive rating.
Interesting. I kind of like getting that behind the scenes look at the score.
And there's so much more I can't tell you.
No. Oh, yeah.
It's all very transparent in there, but that's essentially what happens. So when a film is on that edge, the exact language around certification for freshness is it needs to be consistently above 75%. So they really do carefully hold out on that. But yeah, they designated it certified fresh, and I saw the Screen cast and Screen filmmakers were very happy with that.
Add some real weight to that certified fresh title. I like it, and that movie definitely earned it.
Oh, and then some. And is only the third certified fresh title in the Scream series. So
which
Scream
is just
1,
ridiculous.
I do agree with that, but not saying anything about my previous job. But Scream 1, I believe 79%. Scream 2, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, but both certified fresh. And then Scream 4, which was rotten for a long time, as more reviews came in more recently, actually got to positive territory, but it's not certified fresh. And then Scream 3 is the only current rotten entry in the Scream franchise. Oh, if you don't include the TV series.
Well,
which
poor TV series. It wasn't fair. It got there. Oh, I wasn't even listening to the numbers you said, but you probably got this right. So it was... Okay. It was 79 for 1996 to Scream. Then it jumps to 82 for Scream 2.
See, I had 81, but these numbers change.
Oh my God, I lied. I said 82, and it clearly says 81 here.
Oh, I
feel like I just said that because it was Scream 2. Then it's 41 for Scream 3. 61 for Scream 4.
Yep.
And then we jump to 77 for the latest.
And people should know that the numbers do change, because as more reviews are written, even years later, if they are reviewers or reviews that qualify for the tomato meter, they are added. So we wrote, I'm sorry, we're digressing, but quick note, I know this
enjoying
score
this.
because I wrote an essay on Scream 3 for a Rotten Tomatoes book called Rotten Movies We Love. And at the time I wrote it, I believe the score was 36%. So you can already see that in the space of 3 years, there's been some revisiting of that title. And some of the new reviews that have come in have been positive, and that's why Scream 3 is going more positive. At the time of its release, Scream 4 was 59% and remained there for a long time. But again, one of those titles that's being revisited and as positive reviews are coming in, it's now hit the fresh threshold of 60% and has climbed 1% to 61%.
Yes.
Inside scoop, Scream is a very fresh franchise.
One more fun fact there, the Scream TV series is actually fresh as well. 61%. That's a lot higher than I thought it was going to be.
That is interesting. I'd be interested to see what seasons, because...
Well, okay, so here's the season breakdown. Oh, wow. This is interesting how it balances out. So season 1 is rotten at 52%, but then season 2 is fresh at 92%.
Now what I would do, if I was really into this, I would go in and look at the number of reviews and the kind of websites that are reviewing them. Because oftentimes with the TV title, what will happen is if it isn't a massive hit in the first season, where all the trades and everyone's reviewing it, the second season is going to be predominantly reviewed by fan websites or horror websites. So therefore, you're going to find they're already predisposed to be into this title.
Dude, you're so right. You know this company so well. It's just like
for a while. What can I say?
There's 42 critics ratings in season 1, and then there's only 12 in season 2. So I imagine the people who didn't like it just dropped off, and the rest.
Well, and you'll see that the first season is probably going to be reviewed by a lot of major publications and like the trades and the sort of more neutrals. And the second season are those that were invested, maybe the horror and genre websites.
Very interesting. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm dead serious. I love hearing about the whole system and how it works. All right, let's get into the meat of our episode now. So we have listed out a whole bunch of questions here, and we are going to discuss the possibilities. So the first question on our list is, will the next movie take place in Woodsboro? Because it seems to me that Sam and Tara are on their way out, and it also seems to me that they are going to be the leads of the franchise going forward. But we're talking about Woodsboro and Scream, so can it take place somewhere else? Even though they've done that, obviously, with School and with Hollywood. But I mean, so now I run the risk of bleeding into my next question, so I'm not going to do it yet.
Okay. Well, I think we should say implicit in asking this question is one question that we've already sort of answered, which is that we do think there is going to be a sequel to this movie. So, is the ultimate question, will there be a Scream 6? We're on the team yes, I think, and having this conversation like that is the case. I personally think they kind of have to get out of Woodsboro. I feel like 4 and 5 were this really healthy return to Woodsboro. They both were legacy sequels, requels in their own way, and therefore needed to address that town and get back to the beginning. I think it would be healthy for the franchise, especially as we talk about who it might focus on, to try a new location and do something which I think Scream 2 did phenomenally successfully well, which is to take these characters to the natural next step of their lives, which may not necessarily be to stick around their hometown. And I also just like the idea of, from a fan's point of view, seeing, because we've had this sort of very Woodsboro, very house-focused, very suburban take on Ghostface and his shenanigans for the last 2 editions. I would like to see a little bit of variety there. I would like to see, how does Ghostface function in an apartment building? I don't know. But just in a different location. I know that can get silly. I still mentioned last summer. I forgive that movie. I love that movie. But I also feel like you can get really interesting. So I'm looking forward to a change of scenery.
That actually just sparked a really exciting visual in my mind of, Ghostface operating in a Manhattan apartment building. We've never seen that. And I would be curious, because
I'm sitting in one of those, so let's not hope it happens.
Wait, what?
I said I'm sitting in a Manhattan apartment building now.
Well,
don't wish me.
That's kind of the fun, but that's kind of like the.
I'm also dressed to get murdered in my Woodsboro Film Club memorabilia. But sorry,
it's also reminding me of like Cotton Weary's gray hoodie in Scream 2, and he survived that, so you're fine.
Yeah, until Scream 3.
Well,
which was the first apartment building, right? There you go.
But it is kind of interesting, just because the way my brain worked growing up was, the danger zone in slasher movies is when you're in a suburban neighborhood or a house that's far removed from a main town. And even though there's some very dangerous things about big cities, I always felt safer being in an apartment complex with a whole lot of people.
Right, because, given the kind of things I can hear, you may hear a dog barking soon from someone else's apartment. I could just scream out and be like, hey, Ghostface is here, and one of my neighbors is going to hear me and is going to maybe not come to the rescue because
But will
it's New
they
York. They'd be
believe
like,
you?
meh. They'd be like, it's New York, whatever. But Jason's been to Manhattan. I don't see that Ghostface can't join him.
That's fair enough. I feel like that justifies the point there.
I mean, I don't know that it has to be Manhattan, but I'm like, or a city, urban environment at all. It could be college. It sounds like from this film, Sam forwent a bit of the sort of usual next steps after high school, given the trauma that she was going through. Tara is kind of in the sort of college age, next steps. We could see a college situation, and given my love of Scream 2, I'm not mad about it. Yeah. NYU, we solved 2 problems.
Well, would you
NYU.
look at that? It's like it was meant to be, but all right, I have to kind of bring in the next question now to really get into what I'm thinking at this point. But how involved will Chad and Mindy be? And it's like, on the one hand, after something like this, logically real world, I'm not talking about Scream world because we've seen this happen before, but what are the odds that, Tara, Sam, Chad, and Mindy all go to the same spot again and they're all attacked by Ghostface together? But you don't have Chad and Mindy survive like that if they're not going to continue on with the franchise. So it seems pretty obvious to me that the 4 of them are going to be involved in the next movie, in which case you've got 3 who are with certainty entering college. Mm-hmm. And then Mindy is super into film, so she probably wants to go to NYU film, and then we get Ghostface in Manhattan.
It's happening. I mean, I love that we've already assigned them schools. I think you could make the case that having been through the trauma that they've been through, they may want to stick together or find comfort in sticking together wherever they go to college. That Sam may feel protective of Tara and therefore follow her. There are bowling alleys in Manhattan where she can work if she chooses, or she may want to go back to school. I think there is contrivances. I also, hear me out on this one, when you were talking about the sort of atomization of friendship groups that happens within the American educational system once you enter college and you all go to your other parts of the world. Could we have a seasonal Scream movie set around Christmas or Thanksgiving where they all come back to Woodsboro? And that's why they're all there at the same time.
But not necessarily come back to Woodsboro. Well, this would bring in another question down the line, but I guess they'd want to know. There's reasons for them each to want to come home and spend the time with family, but it's like, even if a set of them moves to a different part of the country, a holiday, gathering could be in that part of the country. It doesn't necessarily have to be in Woodsboro.
That is true. They could all go to Sam and Tara's or wherever it happens to be. Obviously, they're going to be around Union Square somewhere, right? In NYU. We've decided this.
Yeah,
there's going to be a murder. Ghostface is going to murder someone in the middle of Union Square.
God.
I know. Outside of that Regal Theater where they're going to be playing Stab 9 or whatever it is.
That is another thing to consider, is the fact that, in the Scream world, they are 100% with certainty in my brain making another Stab movie, because that is literally something that's happened every single time in the franchise. The second they get more real world material to work with, they make another film. So,
well, 100%. They don't need real world material, right? They've been from Stab 2, I guess.
They don't need
diverging from it.
They emphasize that when they don't have real world material, they wind up with worse movies.
Right, and that is a question we have coming up.
I can't help it. It's all.
Do we want to jump into that question now? I'm like, because yeah.
I guess kinda. We could just ask that question too. With Richie and Amber's goals in this movie, did they succeed? Did they revamp the Stab franchise and turn it into what they wanted again? And I kind of think the answer is yes to that.
Yeah, there's that line at the end, and yes, I've seen the movie multiple times now, so I won't just be like, oh, Perri, I forgot that bit. But where Gail says, no, those fuckers are going to live in anonymity. Yeah, but there are multiple news reporters outside that
Yeah.
house, and what happened in that house is going to get out and be reported on, and be it's going to be massive news given everything that's happened. She may not write a novel about it, but there are going to be other sources of material. There may be Mindy might become like a horror movie influencer who tells her story all over town. Who knows? I think, yes, I think they will potentially revive the franchise, and I think, given the meta nature of how these films go, it will be a direct reflection of how Scream 22 has kind of revamped the franchise as well, and probably be some commentary on the rush to sequelize and all of that actually comes with the sequel we're about to see.
Oh my God, I have so many things to say. I don't even know where to begin. First, my prediction with Mindy, because she seems genuinely shocked at the end. And obviously, after
Mm.
what she's been through, she would. But to see a character with, so much energy and passion for what it means to survive a slasher movie be in that position at the end of the film could be really interesting to explore if the situation kind of stripped her of her love for horror. And,
Yeah.
maybe if there was some sort of narrative about her getting it back or reclaiming it or something like that. So,
By being the killer? Mm.
no. I don't believe Mindy would ever do that. I
No,
don't believe it.
I needed to revive my love of horror, therefore I decided to go and kill a bunch of people.
Another interesting thing to consider if they do make a new Stab movie based on the events of this new film is, given the fact that the other Stab movies based on real events are all adapted from Gail Weathers' books, how do the adaptations change when she's not writing the books anymore?
Right. It would be very
And
interesting to see, um, given how closely the Stab movies we see hew to what actually happened in the films we saw before that, whether these ones are sort of more exaggerated or take liberties.
well, she took some liberties, so maybe taking liberties in different senses. Well, this kind of brings us to question 3, because that idea that I just brought up kind of does suggest that the answer to this is yes. And I'm very conflicted on this one. Will Gail and Sydney return for the next film? And then also, I have in parentheses, do they need to? One of the things that I appreciated the most about this film is that it ends in a place where I'm comfortable letting go of those characters, which is very shocking to me because I'm pretty sure I had to have said this on this show at some point, but like I can't imagine a world where the Scream franchise continues on. I know Gail and Sydney are alive, but they're not involved in the events of the film. The end of Scream 2022, though, feels like it gives them the closure that they deserved, and also tees up enough that I'm into and connected to, and I want to see through enough that I feel ready to let them go have their lives and focus on a new batch of characters.
I think I left the same impression and the same feeling of closure, in a sense that they also got as characters, but we got with their characters. I feel like the arc that they put Gail on in this particular film was fantastic. It allowed her to show that softer side, to move forward with writing the book on Dewey. I think Sydney as well got to come in, save the day. We see that she's already in a healthier spot than perhaps she has been in some previous installments at the beginning of this film, although she was in a pretty good spot at the beginning of Scream 4 as well. But she's definitely made efforts to move on with her life, and then by the end of this film has definitely sort of doubled down on that closing of whatever happened in her past. I do feel, however, that we are not going to have a Scream movie without them, and that they will appear. I do feel they may even be more marginalized, not marginalized, but play more on the
Yeah.
margins than they even did in this film. So I think they may retreat into a sort of advisory, almost glorified cameo-ish style role, because the filmmakers were so thoughtful and successful ultimately in creating this new group of characters, and particularly this central duo in whom we can invest. And I think with the sort of extra characters, particularly Mindy and Chad, characters that have spark and potential to carry things forward in a really rich and interesting way, I just feel that it would be a very big move not to have Sydney and Gail come back in some capacity. And I think the criticism of this film from some fans that I think has some legitimacy, even though I felt it was pretty handled, and as a torch passing, it's kind of essentially what had to happen, was that Gail and Sydney were sidelined just a little too much. I think there's enough fan appetite for a little more, and there's ways of doing it that won't make it dominate the next picture, that I think it will happen.
I'm so torn on the matter. I think because I'm obviously such a big fan, I'll never say no to more Gail and Sydney, but I don't know. I kind of don't want them to run the risk of tarnishing the closure that I got at the end of this film. And I don't know, it just seems especially difficult to make a cameo work in a way that doesn't feel like, like just fan service. Like, here they are having a phone call with Sam because, we need, like, that's what it feels like it could wind up being if they're not a bigger part of the narrative. I think the way that they could reshape the narrative in order to get away with the idea of not incorporating the two of them, at least for the time being, is, I mean, you can always have a Scream scenario play out where it isn't as, televised, or the killings don't last as long. It's like I do wonder if maybe it's a situation where they move to a smaller town, somewhere a little more secluded, and things happen at a more rapid pace where they don't even get the chance to televise the events, or get the chance to call Sydney and be like, well, what do I do? I feel like there's ways to I feel like it might be easier to make more sense than to make a cameo appearance work. But then again, as I say that, literally, like, every other thing they do in this movie, I'm like, you can't do that. You can't kill this character. But they did it, and it worked, and I'm satisfied. So whatever they want to do, fine.
Just don't open Scream 6 with Gail Weathers dying or something.
Well, no, don't do that.
Don't do that. Or Sydney, because I will...
See, but that's the thing. I think they can get away with Sydney and Gail living on, and us never questioning whether or not they should die, and whether or not them living on ruins the stakes of the franchise if they end them here. The second they start to bring them back for more, like, we're going to wind up having the same conversation with the next films. Like, they've made it through 5 of them. They've got to die eventually, right? And the answer is yes, they would if they kept getting into the mix with these situations.
Right. I just think it sounds like you're firmly on the side of no more Gail and Sydney, which is odd to hear, but I get, like, from a narrative point of view, I definitely... Look, I think what you said about 2 minutes ago about there were so many moments within Scream 2022 where you're like, you can't do what you're doing right now, and yet you're successfully doing it. I don't underestimate Radio Silence in their ability to, if they were to somehow keep bringing back Gail and Sydney and to integrate them into the plot. I think I would put, having seen this film, I put my faith in them to be able to pull it off somehow.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I feel like my creative brain is limited, and that's why I stay on this side of the industry. But I have a good sense of when someone should exercise their much more talented creative brain. And I feel like that is just a sign that Radio Silence can try whatever they want, and I get a very good feeling that they'll pull it off.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could be looking up in the rear view mirror and just see Sydney. Could happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, really, you never know.
Yeah, it could just be like,
still in
could be an apparition.
I'm in total shock that works. And I've been thinking a lot about, because a lot of the complaints that I heard about that were that it didn't feel right, that, she saves the day, Sam saves the day by being a little Billy, you know what I mean? And that's kind of why I broke out that quote from that interview about hallucination versus a ghost. It's like, that makes a whole lot of sense to me, being upset over that, if it was the ghost of Billy Loomis and he was him and he was manipulating the situation, but that's not what it is.
No,
it is,
she's got something of him inside her.
It's her fears and her trauma manifesting in this way, and she needs to figure out what to do with it. And that's why that end moment works, and it kind of, like, it feels good at the end.
Oh, it's so satisfying, and it works. It works. It definitely works. My full theater was into it.
Yeah, I love hearing that. So next, who is Sam and Tara's mother?
no bleeping idea. I don't have any thoughts here except that she went to school with them. And that Billy must have been cheating on Sydney. And
Yep.
well, I don't know. There is possibilities with a Venn diagram of timelines and all that didn't quite overlap, but we get that's the kind of vibe, right? He was getting he was getting PG-13 with Sydney and something else with their mother.
The unedited Exorcist.
Yes.
I don't think this is going to be anything special. Like, I think she is just a person who went to Woodsboro.
Oh yeah, I don't think we've seen her. I mean, where did I see some theory that one of the girls in the mirror in the bathroom scene in Scream 1 was the mother of Tara and Sam? Like, that's not what they're doing.
Oh no, I read that. I read that as well. Here, wait, I have a quote on this.
Okay. It's kind of in the same way that Judy Hicks was at school with them and we just learned that. I think this person is a new person.
Yeah. I think that's a really cool, interesting way to, dig back into the past, but with purpose. And I almost, I'm not saying that we should get all of the 1996 characters back and de-aged, but if you ever do want to take a look back, that kind of gives you an avenue that you can actually use to do it. And it would make sense.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let me find this quote.
But I do think, regardless of whether she is someone that popped up in the side corner of Scream somewhere or not, which I'm highly doubting, I think she will be instrumental to the narrative moving forward. I think if one thing we know about this series is parents matter, and the past matters. So I think that she's a real tantalizing absence or hole in this film, particularly given that, she's kind of one of the first people mentioned on that phone call, like it's who Ghostface is allegedly looking for, etc. I think we're being set up, and I feel like whatever sequels treatments they've already written, and I'm assuming there are sequel treatments written for this, that this character is going to be quite instrumental.
So I think you're right on that. I think she's going to have a big role going forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if they had some unused material from this film that they're going to incorporate in the next one. So one of the quotes that I got from them, I just flat out asked them, do you know who Sam's mother is? And Tyler said she, as in their mother, had a couple more scenes in the script. And it was really interesting when we were getting into it. When the rubber was meeting the road and we were really starting to prep the movie, it always felt like we were letting a little too much air into that family unit, that for a story that we really wanted to be about those two sisters, anytime that it became sort of larger than that and about a conflict with mom, it just felt like we were sort of muddying the specificity that we wanted to achieve with these two sisters needing to reconnect over this rift caused by this really dark secret that is that is in one of their pasts. And so we know there's a really cool Christina Carpenter story. There were little bits and pieces of it in one of the drafts, and I definitely hope it's something we can explore more down the line. So
it's coming.
That reads to me like they are going to prioritize that.
I would think so. I think the fact that Christina Carpenter had Billy Loomis's children, the fact that she's into horror movies, right? That's where Tara got her passion from. The fact that she's also lived with this dark secret and the sort of guilt one presumes about Billy and Sydney. And I think what I would love to see is a Sydney Christina scene. That would be interesting. Just from a pure, like, my soap opera side is like, get them in a room together somehow, and like comparing notes on Billy as a 16-year-old. I'm really fascinated by where they're going to go with this character.
I definitely think that Sam is going to be the heart going forward. And another thing that I'm only first thinking about right now is that given what just happened to her in Woodsboro, there is no doubt in my mind that the news about who her father is going to get out. And it's going to completely change her life and how people respond to her. And, the thought of this being the start of Sam's journey to accepting who her father is
Mm.
and moving on from it. I wouldn't mind seeing a similar situation happening with her mother in terms of her relationship with Billy, but also her relationship with Sam, because we need to remember the layers that, you know, it's not just about her having this child with a serial killer. It's also the fact that it's not her fault, but Sam caused her husband to
Yes.
up and leave and broke up her family. And then on top of that, she abandoned them. Like, she up and left. And she, you know, she claims to have her reasons. I think there's some sense to that, but they got a lot of shit to work out beyond just the fact that Billy Loomis is her father. So I hope that the next movie digs into that a good deal, because there's a lot of layers there.
Yeah, and just the idea that sort of abandonment behavior seems to be something the mother is also mirrors, just in terms of her work and the comments about her never being home. And, you know, these girls have been abandoned. Sam has abandoned. There's a lot of abandonment.
Well, and there's a lot of abandonment in the Scream franchise that turns
Yeah.
people into killers. So I would love to see them take that concept and turn it on its head, and instead have, you know, Sam learn and grow and, you know, wind up accepting her past and even using it to better support the people that she loves. I feel like that would be a really interesting way to turn certain behavior that we've seen repeated in this franchise on its head.
I do think that the pandemic and its effect on business travel is going to really disrupt this franchise's reliance on parents traveling internationally or for business to leave their kids alone. The parents are going to be around now. They're just going to be doing their Zoom calls, and Ghostface is going to have some obstacles.
I guess if the next movie does take place during the pandemic, we're gonna have a lot more parent involvement.
Yeah, I'm like because the parents always just like traveling in these movies, and these kids are alone at these massive houses.
We've actually only had one. Have we only had we've had Neil involved? I mean, Hank Loomis kind of counts, and then Jill's mom.
Well, yeah, but Neil was traveling, wasn't he? In the first movie,
Neil was traveling in the
he
first
didn't
one.
get
Yes.
to it, yeah. And then
Well, he was going to travel.
he was trying to travel. We had you know, Christina Carpenter's off she was in London, right? Yeah, no, I think I'm trying to think of the parent. I mean, we have Judy Hicks as
Judy
a
Hicks
parent,
is
and then we have
mom.
Jill's mom. I have scars.
That
What do
whole
I call her?
scene.
Dances with wind chimes.
Oh, those damn wind chimes. And you know, we've got Casey Becker's parents. We can't leave them out.
Good screamer. That mom can scream.
Oh, it's so sad. But no, this franchise does not have and Heather Matarazzo, my God. Martha Meeks.
True, she's good with the snacks. But yeah.
Like, legit the best snacks instead of the best situation for them to have their meeting. She makes me so happy in this.
The Randy Shrine. Oh, it's a really bad painting.
I know. I noticed
terrible
that,
painting.
but it's like appropriately comic.
I know. It's terrible.
All right. Here's another question on our list. How will Sam, I mean, we've kind of covered this. How will Sam use her inner Billy moving forward? And
yeah, I think there's going to be, well, I don't know. I think the few main strands moving forward are obviously going to be the Sam Tara bond and sisterly bond. I think it's going to be the mother and the family history and more Woodsboro secrets, etc. And then I really think there's going to be this ongoing battle with who Sam is, Sam's dark side, what you talked about within sort of embracing it, coming to understand it, coming to some sort of peace with it. I think that may be channeled through media. You know, a lot of the people become celebrity victims in this franchise and then have to deal with that in the public light. I think, you know, once the secret gets out, it could be a little bit of an opening to Spider-Man No Way Home. You know, she could be like Sydney was in Scream 4, like people don't want to be near her. So I think there's a lot of elements that could go forward on the basis of the Loomis of it all.
Here's a better question, actually, to ask. Do you think she's going to keep seeing Billy?
I don't.
Me neither.
Because I feel that was a very satisfying way to end that sort of motif that they had with this film. satisfying in terms of just like audience reaction and stuff. I
Mhm.
also think that they will note that this did not go down so well. Pretend with some viewers. I actually, on having rewatched it a few times now, eased up on the my initial reaction to this and actually quite enjoyed what they were doing with it and felt Skeet did a very good job. But I do think this is one of those elements that people have singled out as being a bit
Mhm.
silly. I disagree with them, so I think maybe they would avoid it in future. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think that's the main reason why they're gonna wind up avoiding it, and also because I think the story that we get in this film gives that thread enough closure that it makes sense
Mm-hmm.
for them to close the door on it, but I like it would be interesting to see how Sam reprocesses that connection with Billy after the events of the film where, initially it's something that she's running away from and now she gets this lesson that she can only survive and keep her loved ones alive if she taps into it. So there could be an interesting kind of like push pull of should I keep him around or should I get rid of him?
Yeah,
Could
no,
be something
100%.
there.
I mean, you could imagine potentially a situation where as events are unfolding in Scream 6, she's actually trying to conjure him or to like get that advice and he's just not appearing. And then she sort of has to by the end realize that she doesn't actually need that thing. It's in her without necessarily needing to come at her as a apparition, not
Yeah.
literal apparition, but you
It's
know what I mean.
It's a good point to bring up because then I think that a good way to incorporate her mother would be having lessons from mom kind of fill that void in a sense.
Yeah, I'm so curious about the mother
So
because
am I. So am
I'm so
I.
she's. I just have this like high flying businesswoman sense, and I'm like, I think it's going to be interesting, but then also can't deal with her daughters. It's going to be complex and fascinating, and I'm casting it in my head.
Oh, who are you casting?
Well, I mean, it would have to be someone of a Latinx background, I think, because the two daughters are
Mhm.
Latinx. And yeah, I don't know. I was watching The Eternals the other day, and I was like, "Oh, bring in Selma!" Because I mean, you could bring in Selma to anything; it'd be fantastic.
I know.
But I was like, but probably too, you need someone slightly young. No, actually, I don't know. She'd have to be Sydney Prescott's contemporary, right? So
Yep.
yeah, I'm not going down a path of talking about women's ages, so let's stop.
There's a lot of possibilities there. I'm curious to see how it all develops. Here's another one that's kind of linked to Billy's return in a way. Do you think that we're ever going to get more about Vince's mom? Because it's a pretty big thing to introduce in this new movie that Stu had a sister, and obviously she's Vince's mom. So it's I don't know. Just why bring something like that up if it's not going to add to the world beyond just a mere mention like that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we should remember about these films is that all of the original characters had multiple, we just got to assume, had multiple family members that were never on screen in Scream 1, which they never referenced or sort of had any impact in their lives.
And they had
Because that's how it
siblings and
moves forward.
children that they didn't know about?
Yes, exactly. And parents. So look, you know how I feel about this. I even on rewatching it, I like the kill scene with Vince. I think there's definitely a scene or two missing with him and Liv. I feel as though this was one of the less thought out elements of the film, and I don't think that we will see much forward movement on the Stu's sister
Mhm.
or Stu's brother, right? Do we know that it's the mom, or was it just
I think it's definitely the mom.
okay, it's definitely the mom, sorry. Yeah, I don't know that we're gonna see
Also,
that.
I feel like I got in your head with the Liv and Vince deleted scene, and I asked them. I asked Radio Silence, and they're like, "No." So I knew I had to tell
Well,
you.
well, then did they explain the look? Did they explain what was going
No.
on? Radio Silence, come on this bloody YouTube channel and tell us what the fuck was going on there. Because I think I could watch that film 30 times and still not understand what was implied, except that she went off for a quickie with him. And I'm like, what? Am I being too crude? Or is that just like, what other explanation
Kinda
is
how I read it.
there?
Uh, I mean, I think it probably makes sense to end the stew thread there. I don't really think there's a good chance that they're gonna continue on with it, but as we've been told by this franchise time and time again, if someone's got a relative, they could pop up at any moment, so for all we know, there will be a reason for Vince's mother to give someone her input or thoughts at some
Or to
point
like
along the way.
be the killer. I mean, that's the Debbie Salt move, right? She could just be a random character in the next movie and then be like, I am Stu's sister / Vince's mom.
Vince's mom.
And I'm played by, let's say, Lily Rabe. And
Oh,
I like that. I'm like, who would
I'm
be?
sold. Did that
Can
just
we
come
fantasy
on the
cast
spot?
Stu's sister? Yeah, I was like, for a second there, I was like, who would I cast? I'm like, I guess Lily Rabe.
I think
Or
she'd be
Martha Plimpton. I'm like,
I'm fine with Martha Plimpton. I think Lily Rabe would be way too young to play Kyle Gallner's mother.
yeah, I don't know her. Again, I'm not getting in that territory. But Martha Plimpton, she could be Matthew Lillard's sister, I think. Right?
Okay. So I didn't think it was really a great idea. Like I was entertaining it to have Stu's sister be the killer, but if Martha Plimpton is in that role, sign me up for that story.
Oh my god. And it's set at college, but also Manhattan, so it's NYU. And I'm getting Scream 2 vibes, and I'm into it. I think we've written this. Radio silence, all is forgiven.
She's a Debbie Salt copycat.
Oh my god, aren't we all?
I kind of like that idea. I'm not going to stop thinking about it. Will Kirby return, but in the flesh?
Yes. I don't know. Where do you stand on this? I feel like, I think it was from your fantastic interview, actually, that I learned that they explored this. Do you want to tell them about what you discovered with the Kirby? And for those who have been living under a rock, the YouTube screenshot in Scream is littered with Easter eggs, including a thumbnail of Survivor Kirby, confirming that Kirby has survived the events of Scream 4.
I love that they did that. That to me is one of the most perfect examples of filmmakers adding to a franchise and looking at what the fans care about.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a game-changing story point that changes anything in the main narrative, but it really meant something to a lot of people, and I appreciated it. Okay, so in that interview, they told me, this quote came from Tyler, that we reached out to Hayden. We always knew it'd be such a fun question to answer. We certainly know that there's a real kind of critical mass around the Kirby thing online. And for our money, she's one of our favorite characters in the franchise. We love Hayden's work in that 4th movie and thought it would be really fun to provide some conclusive evidence of her survival. And we reached out to her at some point. We wanted to have her more involved. At the end of the day, though, for a character that for us is as interesting and as fun to watch as she is, it didn't make sense to do something small. It felt like a better way to service it for this movie was to just have a light nod. And we know that fans that care so deeply about that character would pick up on it. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, that's the meat of it there. But, you know, it makes sense. As much as I want to see her return and be a bigger part of the franchise going forward, I feel like this story, you know, it didn't need another big character
100%.
like that. So I definitely respect the choice, but you don't do that without leaving the door open for Hayden to actually come and play the character again in a future installment. And, you know, going back to what we were saying about whether Sydney or Gail need to return, that to me, actually, like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to be on team let Sydney and Gail have closure even more.
And bring in Kirby.
The thought of Kirby filling that void and being the person to lean on and get advice from feels like it could work, and it could fill that hole without needing to bring them back.
100%. They're doing it. I mean, I don't know if it's the next film but it's coming, because as you said, that kind of Easter egg is a breadcrumb to the house. Like that is what they're building something with that. I think also it makes sense. We've seen a lot of memes around this, I think, in the last 2 weeks, of the dream on-screen team up of Mindy and Kirby being these just incredible vivacious screen stealing horror fanatics who really like just launch off the screen, and everyone's been saying we need to see these two together, and I 100% agree. And I can see someone like Mindy being a fan of someone like Kirby, or at least looking up to her and that connection being there. I do think they can, in the same way that they brought Judy back, look at other characters from the franchise and think about how to incorporate them. There aren't a lot. That's true.
Where's
Joel? Joel, the camera guy, the smartest man in the Scream franchise.
I mean, he kind of is.
Yeah, I'm like, gets out of Dodge. Yeah, so I think Kirby's coming back. And I think, I mean, I read between the lines of that interview and think maybe Hayden just wasn't interested or like had moved on for this one. But I do think the success of this one, coupled with the fervor from fans, could lure Miss Panettiere back.
I've learned nothing from the whole Andrew Garfield situation. Every time I interview someone and they tell me something, I read it as black and white. They're being 100% honest and not trying to like hide any information from me. So I'm still rolling with the idea that they reached out to her and this just wasn't the right time to go full force with Kirby again.
Maybe, but I think she's coming back. I mean,
I think she's coming back too.
They'd be crazy not to be honest.
I look forward to her coming back. Actually, wait, now I have to ask you this question. Did you take the BuzzFeed quiz? Which Scream 5 character are you?
No.
I can't believe you didn't do that right away.
Were you Mindy?
Obviously, I'm Mindy.
Okay.
It's just like literally every single answer that I honestly chose, I just kept thinking to myself, this is taking me one step closer to Mindy, and I love it. See,
I'm going to do it, and then given what I've said, it's going to be ironic because they're going to be like, you're Vince. You're like the irrelevant guy they shoehorned in because they wanted that cool stabbing at the car scene. And I'm like, oh.
They told me a really nice story about Kyle.
I don't rag on. He's great in that role, and that scene is very good.
Kyle is hands down one of my favorite actors out there.
Just that brutal.
Yeah.
Neck. A lot of neck stabbing.
Just like very, very briefly, they said Kyle was a trooper. Kyle had auditioned. This is Matt talking, by the way. Kyle had auditioned for some other parts that just for a myriad of reasons didn't work out. But Kyle is so fucking great and classy and awesome. And he was like, I'll be anything you guys want me to do. I'm in. And we were like, seriously? We have this role, but it's very small, but we want it to feel big. And he's like, fuck yeah, guys, I'm on my way. So I think a big part of the reason Vince made as much of an impression as he did is because of the enthusiasm that Kyle brings to the role. And then they kept saying that Kyle was basing the character on someone. Man, I don't want to paraphrase this. He says, I will say, I think he took that character to the next level because that character was a lot like on the page, he was what Kyle did, but I think Kyle brought this. And then he says, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without being too gossipy. It's like a bravado, a machismo. Yeah, he had someone in mind. Let's just say he had someone in mind that he was basing it off of. Is it that obvious?
I don't know. I'm trying to think.
Because I've thought about this for a little while because the interview happened earlier.
But are they talking about like a real life person or a fictional
that's
character?
Definitely that's definitely the sense I got, that it was a real life person.
Like a famous person, right?
Yeah, so that's what I think.
So I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. Maybe
I don't know.
Teller. I don't know.
I just oh god.
I'm not going to put any names out there.
Is it because of
I don't know. I'm just like, who have I seen that looks that has that look and that feel about it? I don't know.
Okay. I want to know the answer to this so badly. Shall we move on to another question?
I think we should.
How did Sydney and Mark reconnect? I just want to scream. I want to scream short, and it just to be about when they, had that reconnecting phone call or bumped into each other or whatever.
Well, you want like the Animatrix.
Yes.
And a scream that fills in all the holes.
Yes, please.
Of like this situation. I want some Debbie Salt.
What were the Marvel ones called? Marvel One Shot, right?
Marvel One Shot. Yeah. Okay, we can do that. Now, granted, I'm on here as someone who's very expert in this franchise. Is it 100% stated in Scream 4 that she's single, and that he's just not off back home?
No, it's not. But literally to me, everything about her behavior says that she has no romantic ties to anyone.
Well, yes.
She's also pushing a stroller. So that would signal that they have very young children, which would maybe suggest to me that they didn't reconnect, 10 plus years ago, but it was something somewhat more recent.
Well, we're assuming they reconnected, right? I think there are two working theories here. One is that he was just in the background and not
No
mentioned
way.
in Scream 4.
I refuse to believe it.
Which is possible.
Possible.
Because they seemed happy in that little house at the end.
Jeff Campbell hasn't thought about Mark since Scream.
No, who the fuck is that?
My heart.
So, okay, how did they reconnect? Do we even know where she lives? There's like a reference to, are you coming down, right?
God, why do I want to say Seattle or something?
That's what I'm thinking. So it's definitely West Coast. It's West Coast, but north of Central California, right? Because Dewey says, "Are you coming down?" or so, "Don't come down," or something like that.
For the record, though, because I know there's some speculation about is it really Mark Kinkade? I asked them, and they said yes, it is Mark.
Okay.
And then I asked them just for fun, did you imagine how they reconnected? And they were kind of joking around with the answer, but Tyler said at some point after Scream 4, he probably called her and was like, "Hey, I heard you went through it again."
Well, I think that could be as simple as that, right? Or she was traveling, or he was traveling for business and texted her and all that kind of stuff. That you up? It's all that kind of.
Well, she had just done a book tour, so Woodsboro was the last stop. So maybe he knew her book was coming to town, and he met her again there.
And I mean, maybe he transitioned to Seattle PD, or who knows what was happening there. I'm just glad they've reconnected. Do we think he's going to make an appearance? If they bring Sydney back, will they bring Mark back?
No. See, that's a reference that they made. It's like, whereas I look at the Kirby one, I'm like, you don't do that unless you open the door for her to return. Yeah. I think that was just a respectful nod to the relationship that we were all like, well, what happened after Scream 3?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you're signaling closure for Sydney at all, you're not going to open the door wider for more people in her life to step in.
No, I agree. And I mean, with all respect to Mark, and to Patrick Dempsey, I don't think he's someone that the fans are clamoring for in the same way that they are for Kirby. Also, when you rewatch Scream 3, he's got a really interesting character stuff going on there. It's yeah.
What's Mark Kincaid's favorite horror movie?
Life, isn't it?
Yeah. My Life.
My Life.
All right, we got.
Can we talk about Judy? Because just Judy, the animation and the musicals, you reminded me of that. I was on Twitter the other day, and Michael Kennedy, our mutual Twitter friend who wrote Freaky and has got Time Cut coming out, just started obsessing about the way that Ghostface says Sheriff Judy in this film. And Sheriff it is Judy. Quite Judy.
I know, about it.
Judy.
I need to tell Michael that he's not alone, because every single time I talk about the movie and I want to say Judy Hicks, I'm very tempted to be like, Judy Hicks.
Judy. It's just insane. It's amazing.
It's just so random.
Shout out,
I love
George
it.
Jackson. Yeah, amazing. He's so good in this film.
I wonder who made that creative decision. If that was something that Roger L. Jackson was just like, I got to do this.
Well, I mean, I think he gets a little bit camp at the end when he calls Sydney as well. When she's going up the stairs, which I really like, and then it contrasts with her being like, get off the phone, I'm done. Loved it. Anyway, sorry.
Sheriff Judy. Will Radio Silence return to direct?
You probably have a direct answer from them, so why don't you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't confirm anything. Let me go up to, actually, I have the actual quote.
Well, while you're looking, I would say, not knowing what they said, but presuming that they equivocated and said something like, "Oh, if it's successful and it goes ahead, we'd love to be considered. We'd love to." But I would say yes. I would say you don't, like David Gordon Green, you don't have a duo revive a franchise so successfully and then not give them the option, the first option of coming back. What did they actually say, though?
So I'm very sensitive on the matter. I really want them to return. I think that's important, even though I know that there's other, wonderful filmmakers out there who could probably do a great job. And I'm very much team them returning. But the way I phrase the question, because this is kind of what happens, is I see a movie that I love like this, and then I can't help but to, get very greedy and in my mind want to shackle them to this franchise when, I'm sure they're very passionate about the franchise, but they're creative individuals who I'm sure have more interest than just making Scream movies. So that's kind of the way I teed it up. And then they said, I think we can say that we love both ideas, and I think we want to pursue both things, as in making more Scream movies and doing original projects. We have a bunch of really fun, original things that we're working on. We know that there's been a conversation about Ready or Not. So, hey, I would love a Ready or Not sequel too. We certainly know that Guy and Jamie have amazing ideas about where Scream could go after this last one. We just want to be involved in all of it. I think once you've had an experience with people that really changes you, not only creatively, but fills your heart up and fulfills you really in ways that I think we all never thought we would be fulfilled, you just want to replicate that as many times as possible. And so I know we'll have a ton of really amazing stuff with Guy and Jamie and William and Paul, the Project X team. I think we've got a lot of really fun original stuff coming up as well. So I think a bit of all of it, but this was a unique challenge, and I think it scratched an itch we didn't know we had, and I think it'll continue to itch. So hopefully there's more.
Wow, that's a lot of answer.
They were very open, and I appreciated that. They really did answer all of my questions thoughtfully and I think enthusiastically.
A very good interview, and if you haven't already watched it and read all the excerpts that Perri wrote up, you should. I think they will come back. But I will say I'm also quite excited about the prospect of different director every Scream. I like the idea of different takes. That could also be interesting. I would love to see what someone like is it Sian Heder?
The director of Coda.
Sorry. Oops, wrong person. Fear Street director.
Oh, Lee Janiak.
Lee Janiak, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Would do with Scream. She certainly has it in her DNA to
Lee gets it. I believe she gets it. She gets it. It's like if you told me probably anybody else on the planet was directing Scream 6 except for Radio Silence, I'd probably feel a degree of disappointment depending on who you named. If it was announced that Lee Janiak was directing and Radio Silence was serving in a producerial capacity, I don't think I would feel an ounce of sadness. I would just be full happy.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. She really does get it. So, Sian Heder would do an interesting job too. Why not? Be very emotional.
I've also, I can't remember if we brought up this name on this show, but I've heard Karan Kusama. That's another name that excites me too. But she taps into a different, a different style and tone of genre. So I don't think it would be as good of a match as Lee Janiak, but that's another name that I could definitely get behind.
The thing about it is, right, you've got to sort of consider what you want. Do you want something to break? Do you want, I guess is the thing as fans, do we want Stab 8? Or do we want someone who can really master the vibe?
This is a bold swing I'm about to take here, but it's something that I have thought, because in general with franchises, I really do tend to have a lot of questions about the in-between moments. I genuinely wouldn't mind something that, I don't know, maybe went back in time and as a side story or a spinoff explored how Kirby processed what she went through. And maybe it doesn't involve Ghostface and isn't part of the main series, but it's some side story that eventually paves the way for Kirby to come back into the main series full force. There's a lot of in-betweens that I think are worth exploring, even though I don't think those in-betweens call for the involvement of a Ghostface killer.
Ooh. Yeah,
I think about that a lot with every franchise. I have a mile-long list of those types of.
I think that would be an interesting approach. I just feel I think we discussed this last time, where it's can you do it without the formula? And it's hard because it's
risky.
It's so risky. It's so risky. Is what I would say.
I
would be excited for it, but. I think even as a fan and someone who's extraordinarily open-minded, I'd still miss good old Ghostface.
Yeah. I would struggle with it, but if I'm going to say I'm a person who is open to creative swings, give it a shot. Try it out. All right, here's our last question. It's a big one. How long until we get another Scream film?
I feel like I should Google now to see if they've announced it, because I check every 30 minutes. I mean, I would say soon. I would think that we're going to get another Scream film early 2024 or 2024 at the latest overall. What do you think?
I think you're spot on. I think 2024 at the absolute latest. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to churn something out sooner rather than later. And it's like, if there's any concern that they'd be rushing it, I don't think that's an issue, because clearly Radio Silence have already said that they've got ideas for more in the series. So I think if they're sitting on concepts that are worthy of another film, like, it's just a matter of getting the okay from the studio and moving on with it. And I think Paramount in particular is a studio that needs to build more successful franchises, and they got a good one here, so they should do it.
Yeah, I would suspect they have much more than concepts. I know what you're saying. I think they may have scripts. I think they may be ready to go, and I think that it won't be. I'm surprised they haven't announced it yet, to be honest. Given the box office success and the second week box office success, I think we're going to see an announcement quickly. I think this is a very profitable film. What is it? $25 million budget, $24 million budget, $51 million domestically so far, more internationally.
I used to be able to look all this up so quickly, but because
even if you're adding on the marketing and printing and distribution costs, it's a very profitable film. It's a revamped franchise. People are excited about it. They will strike while the iron/knife is hot, and yeah, I think it's going to be soon. I think you're right. I think it could be 2023.
Wikipedia claims $24 million production budget, by the way.
Yeah, and I think like the marketing was, they had a really great marketing campaign, but probably not an expensive marketing campaign. I think what they benefited from was the fact that nothing else was opening in January, and so they had the runway when it came to press as well.
I wonder if they wind up sitting on the sequel announcement until it hits Paramount Plus, because like the 1-2 punch would be make the money at the box office, but then drive subscribers to your streaming service. And if you do announce we're making another Scream movie, and the movie that just came out is now available here, it could up the urgency to sign up for Paramount Plus.
Very smart. I think that's the move. Yeah, I think it's happening. For those who question whether it's too soon, how quickly after Scream 1 did Scream 2 come out, and how good is Scream 2?
Very quickly. My brain still can't process how they did all of that fast.
And it's so good. Yeah.
All right. I've run through all the questions that we wrote out, but I have a feeling the second I end this broadcast, we will think of more questions, but that means we'll have to do another episode.
Right. Who is Mindy and Chad's father?
I'm curious. I'd like to know that.
I'm curious.
I would also like a Martha Meeks spinoff movie. So there.
I would like a sitcom on Paramount Plus.
All right. Let's do it. I'm fine with all this. We're building a whole Scream cinematic universe right here.
We also want a drama about Jennifer Jolie's early days in Hollywood. Can we do that, please? A dramedy, Mrs. Maisel style. I don't know. I'm feeling it.
I feel like you're seeing so much stress on my face because I really like the idea, but then I just considered the fact that it couldn't be played by Parker Posey, and I got very stressed about it.
Although they've gotten into the aging business, so
different thing with a lead character in a whole
this
series.
Is true.
I don't know if I would greenlight that.
I don't know. It could be an absurdist take. That's almost like
what I need?
15.
You know what I
with
mean?
Her playing herself.
Here's how you bring Parker Posey back in that role. In the next movie, it's just a scenario where someone's in a room where a movie's playing, and it's a Jennifer Jolie movie in the background. Done. Do it, please. Easter egg that I love.
I'm there for it.
All right. We can always end on a good Jennifer Jolie Parker Posey note. That is it for this edition of Countdown to Scream 2022. Those right there were our answers to these questions, but it's open to interpretation. The possibilities are endless. So if you have a different idea, if you disagree with us, if you agree with us, hit the comment section, share your own thoughts there. That's it. Joel, it's an honor.
Perri, it's an honor.